Jalen Brooks didn't make headlines when he first stepped onto the campus of Winston University. No welcome banners, no student tour guides, no crowd of curious classmates whispering his name. He was just another freshman, hood up, backpack worn, eyes steady. But if anyone had paid closer attention, they might have noticed something different about him. He didn't walk like he was new. He walked like someone with a purpose. Born and raised in the south side of Chicago, Jalen was no stranger to being underestimated. He had survived tougher classrooms and colder streets than anything Winston could throw at him. What set him apart wasn't just the full academic scholarship or the fact that he'd tested into one of the most prestigious programs in the country. It was the way he carried silence like armor. While others scrambled for attention, he moved like a shadow, watching, listening, remembering. From the moment he arrived, the whispers began. Scholarship, kid. Probably here to play ball. Won't last a semester. But Jalen didn't flinch. He took every smirk, every side eye, every casual insult, and tucked them away like puzzle pieces. Because while the others played games, Jalen was building a plan. They thought he was alone, powerless, invisible. But what they didn't know was that sometimes the ones you don't see coming are the ones who flip everything upside down. If you believe in quiet strength and powerful comebacks, hit the comment with number 7. What happens next will shake the very walls of Winston University. Bryce Callahan had a sixth sense for control. He could smell fear, spot insecurity, and size up threats before they even knew who he was. At Winston University, he wasn't just a student. He was legacy royalty, son of a board member, heir to a multi-million-dollar empire, and self-appointed gatekeeper of social order. Professors gave him second chances. Coaches bent the rules. His name carried weight that crushed obstacles before they formed. So when Jalen Brooks walked in, calm, composed, and utterly indifferent, Bryce noticed. Jalen didn't laugh at Bryce's jokes, didn't ask to sit at the right lunch table, didn't wear the brands, attend the parties, or fall in line with the silent hierarchy that dictated Winston's social survival. He just showed up, head down, grades up, and eyes always watching. That made Bryce uncomfortable. He was used to people reacting to him, but Jalen didn't. Not when Bryce accidentally bumped him in the hall. Not when his notes went mysteriously missing before midterms. Not even when someone anonymously posted a meme mocking Jalen's neighborhood and scholarship status. Jalen didn't flinch. That unnerved Bryce more than any punch would have. So he pushed harder. One afternoon, Jalen returned to find his locker wide open, papers shredded, and a crude message scrawled on the inside. Know your place. The hallway had been empty, but Jalen knew exactly who was behind it. Still, no confrontation, no call out. Just a quiet glance toward the nearest security camera. Bryce thought he was breaking him down. What he didn't realize was that Jalen was recording everything, mentally, digitally, and strategically. He wasn't just enduring, he was cataloging every move, every insult, every pattern of abuse. Because Jalen knew something Bryce didn't. Real strength isn't loud. It happened in the quietest corner of the campus library, beneath flickering fluorescent lights between two long-forgotten stacks of textbooks. Jalen Brooks was reviewing lecture notes when a shadow moved beside him. It was Andres Vega, a fellow sophomore, barely noticeable most days. He was soft-spoken, sat in the back, never drew attention. But today he had purpose in his eyes. You're watching them, aren't you? Andres asked, voice low. Jalen's guard went up. He said nothing, just stared. Andres slid a flash drive across the table. You're not the first. You won't be the last. But you might be the one who gets it right. Inside that flash drive was a year's worth of quiet suffering, screenshots, schedules, notes. Proof of a hidden cheating ring operating in plain sight. Andres had been a top student until he got too close, too vocal. Bryce and his circle buried him in rumors, then adjusted his grades through their connections. He lost his honors track, his internship opportunity, and nearly dropped out. They don't care who they step on, Andres said. They just care that no one climbs higher than them, especially someone like you. Jalen was stunned, not by the corruption, but by the confirmation. He wasn't paranoid. He wasn't imagining it. The system at Winston University was bent, twisted to serve the rich and silence the rest. "Why me?" Jalen finally asked. Andres smiled grimly. "Because I saw you stand up by not reacting. That takes strength they'll never understand." From that moment, everything changed. Jalen wasn't operating alone anymore. With Andres beside him, he had not only evidence, but a witness. Someone who knew the terrain, the threats, the power games. Andres didn't just open a door, he lit the fuse. The deeper Jalen Brooks dug, the darker the truth became. Fueled by the flash drive Andres Vega had given him, Jalen began piecing together what had once been only whispers and rumors. But now he had names, dates, passwords, patterns. What he uncovered wasn't just isolated cheating. It was a well-oiled academic fraud machine running quietly beneath Winston University's glossy brochure image. It started with a shared Dropbox folder disguised as Study Group Resources. Inside, answer keys to upcoming exams, paper templates, and entire pre-written essays. Many were stamped with timestamps before the exams had even been administered. Some were authored by graduate assistants, others clearly linked back to professors too busy to notice the sudden spikes in their students' performance. Jalen found payment records, cryptic Venmo transactions labeled textbooks or meal swipes that matched perfectly with assignment submission dates. A few even included laughing emojis and insider tags like "Azza" and "Thanks, Bryce." At the center of it all was Bryce Callahan. He wasn't just a bully, he was the broker, the deal maker, the son of a board member who used his untouchable status to build an underground system that let the rich coast by while others drowned in pressure. And it wasn't limited to students. A tenured professor's name appeared more than once. So did two administrators, one of whom had personally approved Jalen's routine academic review just days after Bryce trashed his locker. Jalen's pulse raced as he compiled the files, not from fear, but from focus. He had the evidence. Cold, undeniable, time-stamped truth. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. For Andres. For every student who worked hard only to be outshined by shortcuts. Jalen wasn't looking for a fight, but now he was armed for a war, and Winston University was about to feel the impact. Jalen Brooks had the proof, but exposing a system as deep-rooted as Winston University's cheating empire would take more than files and screenshots. It would take people, those brave enough to stand beside him when the truth hit daylight. The first to step forward was Dana Whitaker, the head librarian. She had noticed strange requests from a handful of students, access to archived tests that should have been locked away, suspicious grade revisions on faculty-verified transcripts. When Jalen approached her quietly, she didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting for someone like you," she said, sliding a file across the table. "Now I know why my job felt unfinished." Then came Lena Park, editor-in-chief of the campus newspaper. Fierce, sharp-tongued, and completely uninterested in popularity, Lena had spent months frustrated by soft news and censored stories. But when Jalen showed her the documents, her journalistic instincts flared. "This isn't a story," she said. "It's a movement, and we're going to tell it the right way." And then there was Natalie Rhodes, a tech-savvy junior who worked in the IT office. Jalen had barely begun to explain when she stopped him. "You're looking for surveillance footage from the West hallway," she said. "Already pulled it." Natalie handed him a USB. On it was crystal-clear video of Bryce slipping into the server room after hours. Clear evidence he wasn't just cheating, he was covering his tracks. The circle was forming. Each person brought not just knowledge, but resolve. They weren't rebels. They were truth-tellers in a place that rewarded silence. And for the first time since arriving at Winston, Jalen wasn't alone in the fight. He was part of something bigger, a team built not on privilege, but on principle. And together they were ready to light the match. The showdown wasn't planned, at least not by Jalen Brooks. It started with whispers. Bryce Callahan boasting about how he'd put the scholarship kid in his place during open gym Friday afternoon. By the time students gathered around the basketball court, the energy was electric. Phones were out, live streams rolling. This wasn't just a workout session, it was a spectacle. Bryce, shirtless and grinning, bounced a basketball arrogantly, flanked by his usual entourage. "Come on, Jalen," he called out. "Let's see if that quiet attitude comes with a spine." Jalen stood at the edge of the crowd, calm, hoodie pulled up, watching. He hadn't come to fight, but he wasn't going to walk away either. Wordlessly, Jalen stepped onto the court. No trash talk, no theatrics, just steady eyes and silent confidence. Bryce smirked and lunged forward, expecting to humiliate him in front of everyone. In under 10 seconds, everything changed. One swift sidestep, a subtle sweep, a controlled takedown, and Bryce was on the floor, gasping, confused and stunned. The crowd froze. Then the gasps turned into cheers. Phones zoomed in, replays hit TikTok within minutes. Someone captioned it, "The kid who said nothing just said everything." By nightfall, the video had gone viral, not just within Winston University but beyond. Jalen wasn't just that quiet scholarship student anymore. He was the storm in silence. But Jalen didn't bask in it. He helped Bryce to his feet, looked him in the eye, and simply said, "Now maybe you'll stop testing people who already passed." The gym exploded. But this wasn't revenge, it was a spark. The moment that turned whispers into conversations, spectators into believers. If you're rooting for Jalen and believe in quiet power, drop a 7 in the comments. If this wasn't your style, hit 0. Every voice matters. Because this story, it's just getting started. The morning after the gym showdown, Jalen Brooks walked across campus with a new kind of silence hanging over him. This time, it wasn't isolation. It was recognition. Eyes followed him. Conversations hushed when he passed. The video had changed things, but so had something else. His phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications, friend requests, strange DMs. Then an anonymous text popped up. "Check the forum. You're famous." His stomach sank. On Winston's private student forum, someone had posted his full name, a photo of him training at a community center back home, and a file marked "The Truth About Jalen Brooks." It included falsified academic records, a doctored suspension letter, and a claim that he had hacked into school systems to gather his evidence. The damage was swift. Comments exploded. Some cheered. Others jeered. A few started questioning everything he'd exposed. Jalen had worked in shadows for a reason, not to hide guilt, but to protect the mission. And now someone from within his circle had stripped that shield away. He'd been betrayed. The weight of it hit hard, not just the exposure, but the fact that it had to be someone close. Only 5 people had access to the Operation Truth files. One of them had turned. Within hours, Jalen was called into the dean's office. His access to the campus server was suspended. An internal investigation was underway. Bryce Callahan had already begun spinning the narrative, claiming victimhood, suggesting Jalen had staged the gym takedown for clout. But Jalen didn't crumble. That night, he met with Marcus Dean, a civil rights attorney and longtime family friend. "They tried to bury you," Marcus said, reviewing the leaked documents, "but we'll show them what happens when they dig too deep." The betrayal had exposed him, but it had also made him impossible to ignore. And now the story wasn't just about cheating, it was about truth, and who had the courage to stand by it when everything was stripped away. By midweek, Winston University wasn't just trending, it was under fire. Local news stations aired the viral gym clip alongside headlines like, "Whistleblower student suspended after exposing elite cheating ring." Blogs picked up the story, podcasts dissected it, and national outlets were calling by the hour. The narrative had shifted from campus drama to a scandal of systemic privilege and silence. What began with whispers in the library was now broadcast on morning television. Jalen Brooks, once unknown, was now the face of resistance. Whether he wanted to be or not, his story was no longer just his own. Students from other campuses sent messages of solidarity. Former Winston students came forward with eerily similar experiences. An alumni letter with over 200 signatures demanded an independent investigation. And behind closed doors, the administration scrambled. Emails were deleted. Legal teams were assembled. Faculty who had once applauded Bryce's leadership now distanced themselves. Professors canceled lectures. Study halls emptied. Tension buzzed through every hallway. Trust, once implicit in Winston's manicured image, was now a smoldering wreck. Inside the chaos, Lena Park relaunched the Operation Truth site on a decentralized platform. Natalie Rhodes uploaded new security footage, this time showing Bryce accessing the server room unauthorized. Dana Whitaker shared records proving selective grade manipulation, going back 3 years. Jalen wasn't speaking at rallies or giving interviews. He was letting the truth speak for itself. But it was loud. Parents threatened to pull tuition. Donors froze funding. The school board, under intense public scrutiny, called for an emergency hearing. Protest signs popped up on campus lawns. Students wore black tape over their mouths in silent protest, mimicking the silence Jalen once walked in alone. Winston wasn't just unraveling, it was burning, fueled not by anger, but by accountability. And Jalen Brooks stood at the center, not as a hero, not as a victim, but as a mirror, reflecting a truth the school could no longer ignore. The room was packed, but you could hear a pin drop. Students filled the auditorium seats, some standing in the back, others sitting cross-legged in the aisles. Professors lined the walls. Parents, donors, trustees, all present for the emergency hearing that Winston University could no longer delay. Reporters positioned cameras like weapons. At the front of it all sat the university board, rigid behind a long table, flanked by legal advisors and PR consultants. And then there was Jalen Brooks, walking calmly to the microphone. No suit, no entourage, just a plain navy blue shirt and a file in his hands, one that held more truth than anyone on that board was prepared for. He looked out across the sea of faces, paused, and said simply, "I didn't come here to destroy Winston. I came here believing it was worth saving." For the next 10 minutes he spoke, not with fury but with purpose. He recounted the microaggressions, the cover-ups, the systems designed not to educate but to exclude. He named no names, but he named every truth. He showed timelines, data, documentation. He shared testimonies from students too afraid to come forward themselves. Behind him, a projector flickered to life. Emails, payment logs, grade changes, server access logs, all real, all verified, all impossible to dismiss. The board sat in silence. A few shifted uncomfortably. One parent wiped away a tear. Jalen's final words echoed louder than any protest. "If integrity is disruptive, maybe what you're protecting isn't education, it's image." He stepped back, and for a moment there was only silence. Then one student clapped, another stood, then another. Within seconds, the room erupted, not in chaos but in clarity, because Jalen hadn't come to defend himself. He had come to remind them of what education is supposed to stand for. And they heard him, all of them. Just as the applause began to fade and the crowd settled into stunned silence, a voice rose from the back of the auditorium. "I have something to say." All heads turned. Bryce Callahan stood slowly, dressed not in his usual designer flair, but in a simple gray hoodie and jeans. For the first time, there was no smugness in his expression, only weariness. The room, still buzzing from Jalen Brooks's powerful testimony, watched in disbelief as the once untouchable golden boy walked toward the microphone. No one stopped him. Even Jalen, standing to the side of the stage, looked on, not angry, not afraid, but curious. Bryce took a deep breath, gripped the edge of the podium, and spoke. "I didn't expect this to go this far. I thought I could control it, hide behind my last name, my money, my connections. But he gestured toward Jalen, did what none of us ever had the guts to do. He told the truth." The room froze. Bryce's voice cracked. "We did cheat. We manipulated. We paid. And yes, we were protected. But it wasn't just us. Faculty knew. Admin knew. Some of them even helped cover it up. And I let them, because I was too proud to stop." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few board members glanced at each other, visibly shaken. Bryce turned to Jalen. "I can't undo what I did to you, but I can stop pretending." He pulled a folded sheet from his back pocket and laid it on the table in front of the board. "My signed statement, everything I know, every name." Then he stepped back from the mic and walked out, not looking for applause or redemption, just release. And in that moment, the story changed again. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just shatter walls, it breaks chains, even for those who helped build them. Weeks passed, but the impact remained. Winston University didn't collapse, but it changed. A third-party investigation was launched. Several faculty quietly resigned. The administration announced sweeping reforms, transparent grading policies, whistleblower protections, and a complete review of financial influence on academic decisions. Bryce Callahan disappeared from campus. Not expelled, but transferred quietly, away from the cameras. His statement had helped to spark a deeper probe, one that would ripple through other elite institutions. As for Jalen Brooks, he didn't step into the spotlight. He declined interview requests, turned down speaking tours. Instead, he returned to class. Same seat in the back row, same quiet demeanor. But now when he walked through campus, people didn't look through him. They looked to him. He wasn't just the student who exposed the system. He became a symbol of resilience, of quiet strength, of what happens when one voice, backed by truth, refuses to stay silent. Operation Truth lived on, maintained by students across campuses, growing into a national coalition for academic fairness. Lena kept writing. Natalie kept digging. Andres? He smiled again, for the first time in a long time. And Jalen? He just kept walking. Not for attention, not for praise, but because the quiet ones, the watchers, the listeners, the thinkers, aren't trying to lead. They're just trying to make things right. And when they rise with purpose. They rise with proof. And when they speak, the world finally listens. As we reflect on the powerful story of Jalen Brooks, we're reminded that courage doesn't always wear a cape, and change doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it's the quietest among us, the ones who observe, listen, and wait, who ultimately make the biggest difference. In a world that often rewards loud voices and bold personalities, Jalen showed that character, patience, and truth are still the most enduring forms of strength. For many of us who've lived through decades of change, from civil rights marches to shifting cultural tides, we know that injustice rarely shouts. It whispers. It hides in plain sight, buried beneath smiles and systems. Jalen didn't fight with fists or fury. He fought with facts, strategy, and quiet resolve. His story reminds us that even when you feel overlooked, your values still hold power. That integrity, though old-fashioned to some, never goes out of style. This message isn't just for young students in ivy-covered halls. It's for all of us. It tells us to keep watching, to keep asking questions, and to stand firm in what we know is right, even when it's not popular. It encourages us to support the young people in our lives who are navigating difficult environments with grace. And it reminds us, too, that it's never too late to speak up, to share our wisdom, and to light a path forward for those who come next. Jalen's story didn't just expose a corrupt system, it restored belief in what education, truth, and quiet leadership can still mean. If this story moved you, please press 7 in the comments to let us know you're with us. Share this video with someone who still believes in standing for what's right, even when it's hard, and follow along as we continue telling stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us that the quiet ones still have something to say.